When Alpha King Darius ripped the crown from his queen's head and placed it on his mistress before 20,000 wolves, the entire kingdom cheered. What they didn't know was that the woman they were humiliating carried a secret bloodline powerful enough to change history. And before the story was over, the most feared alpha in the world would take her away, and Darius would lose everything he loved. This is the story of the greatest mistake an alpha ever made. 3 months earlier, the marketplace of Silverfang City buzzed with life. Merchants shouted prices. Children raced between stalls. Musicians played near the fountain. Suddenly, a small boy pushed through the crowd. Queen Elena. The child sprinted forward. 2 royal guards immediately stepped into his path. Elena raised a hand. Let him through. The guards stepped aside. The boy crashed into her arms. The crowd laughed. My mother said you saved our farm. The boy grinned. Elena knelt beside him. Your mother saved it. I only signed the order. An elderly farmer nearby shook his head. No, Your Majesty. Nobody else listened. Several villagers nodded. A young woman stepped forward carrying a basket. My husband survived the winter because of the grain shipments. And my brother received treatment from the royal healers, another added. Elena smiled. I'm glad you're all well. The crowd gradually surrounded her. Not because they were required to, because they wanted to. Across the square, merchants began lowering their heads respectfully. Children waved. Old veterans saluted. Nobody noticed Prince Advisor Rowan observing from a balcony. He smiled. The people love her more every year. Beside him, another noble nodded. One day her children will inherit this kingdom. Far away, inside the palace, Alpha King Darius looked out his window toward the city. The sight made him smile. For years, he had believed Elena was the greatest blessing the moon goddess had ever given him. At that moment, he meant it. For 5 years, Queen Elena had been the heart of Silverfang Kingdom, while Darius inspired fear beyond the borders. Elena inspired loyalty within them. Together, they seemed impossible to break. But the greatest threats rarely arrive wearing armor. Sometimes, they arrive wearing a smile. The palace gates opened. A black carriage rolled into the courtyard. Servants paused. Guards exchanged glances. The carriage door opened. A woman stepped out. Elegant, beautiful, confident. Lady Saraphina Ashwood. She surveyed the palace without speaking. Her eyes moved carefully. The guards, the servants, the advisors, the royal family, studying, measuring, calculating. Then she saw Elena crossing the courtyard. Several servants immediately rushed toward the queen. Your Majesty, Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Elena greeted every one of them by name. Saraphina noticed. Interesting. Very interesting. One of her attendants whispered. That's Queen Elena. Saraphina watched silently, then smiled. She's even more beloved than I expected. The attendant frowned. Is that a problem? Saraphina's smile widened. It will be. 2 weeks later, Royal Council Chamber. Arguments erupted around the table. Border disputes. Trade problems. Military concerns. Darius rubbed his forehead. The meeting had lasted 6 hours. Finally, he stood. Enough. We'll continue tomorrow. The advisors quickly departed. Darius remained behind. Alone. Or so he thought. Long day. He looked up. Saraphina stood in the doorway holding 2 glasses of wine. Darius sighed. You have no idea. She handed him a glass. Their fingers briefly touched. Everyone needs something to lean on. Darius smirked. I don't. Saraphina laughed softly. That's exactly what men like you always say. Over the following weeks, moments like this multiplied. Small conversations. Private compliments. Shared frustrations. Carefully chosen words. One evening, Elena entered the library. She stopped. Darius and Saraphina sat together laughing. Neither noticed her. For several seconds, Elena simply watched, then quietly left. Darius never saw her. Saraphina did. And hidden behind her smile, victory flickered. Saraphina never rushed. She understood something many rulers never learned. Kingdoms were not conquered overnight. They were conquered one decision at a time. The royal archives. Chaos erupted. Guards searched shelves. Servants carried documents. Council members argued. The trade treaty is missing. We need it for tomorrow's negotiations. Search again. Hours later, the council assembled. Darius stood at the head of the room. Has anyone found it? Nobody answered. Then Saraphina slowly stood. I may have seen something. Every eye turned toward her. Darius frowned. What? Saraphina hesitated, as though reluctant, as though afraid. Then she spoke. Last night, I saw someone leaving the archives. Who? Saraphina lowered her gaze. The silence became painful. Finally, Queen Elena. The room froze. Elena stared at her. What? Darius turned. Elena? I wasn't even near the archives. Saraphina immediately spoke. I'm sure there's an explanation. Elena's jaw tightened. The room filled with whispers. For the first time in 5 years, Darius didn't immediately defend her. And Elena noticed. Days passed. The palace changed. Conversations stopped when Elena entered rooms. Nobles whispered behind closed doors. Supporters of Saraphina grew louder. One afternoon, Elena entered the royal garden. 3 noble women immediately stopped talking. She approached. Is there something you'd like to say? The women exchanged nervous looks. One finally spoke. We only want what's best for the kingdom. Elena nodded. So do I. But even she could hear the uncertainty in their voices. That evening, she confronted Darius. Do you trust me? Darius looked away. The answer came too slowly, and that hurt more than any accusation. The document itself was insignificant. The doubt it created was not. Saraphina had achieved exactly what she wanted. For the first time, the bond between king and queen had begun to crack. The grand assembly hall overflowed with nobles, military commanders, judges, pack leaders, the entire kingdom's elite. Elena stood calmly beside the throne. Then Saraphina stepped forward, holding a collection of letters. My king. The room quieted. I have discovered evidence. Darius frowned. What evidence? Saraphina handed him the letters. The king's expression darkened. One by one, copies spread through the hall. Murmurs erupted. Shock. Confusion. Fear. Elena grabbed a letter. Her heart dropped. The royal seal was perfect. The handwriting appeared authentic. The accusations were devastating. Secret communications. Enemy alliances. Treason. Elena looked toward Darius. These are fake. Nobody answered. The silence was deafening. Then one noble stood. If these letters are genuine, the queen has betrayed the kingdom. Another rose. We demand an investigation. Another. And justice. The hall exploded into arguments. For the first time, Elena realized someone had spent months preparing this trap, and she was already standing inside it. The grand arena. 20,000 wolves. Every seat occupied. Every balcony filled. At the center stood Queen Elena. Alone. The royal herald raised his staff. By decree of Alpha King Darius Blackthorne, the crowd fell silent. Queen Elena Ravenspire is stripped of her title, authority, and position. Gasps erupted. Elena never looked away from Darius. Not once. The Alpha descended the platform steps. Slowly. He stopped before her. His hands reached toward her crown. For a brief moment, neither moved. 5 years of memories passed between them. Their wedding. Their vows. Their victories. Their dreams. Then, Darius lifted the crown away. The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Others looked horrified. Elena remained silent. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Nothing more. Darius turned. Saraphina stepped forward, smiling. The Alpha placed the crown upon her head. The new queen raised her chin triumphantly. The arena exploded. Elena simply stared. Then she bowed. Not to Saraphina, not to the crowd, to the kingdom she had served, and walked away. No begging, no screaming, no defense, only silence. And somehow, that silence hurt everyone more. That night, Queen Elena vanished. Her chambers were empty. Her horses remained in the stable. No guards saw her leave. No servant knew where she went. By sunrise, the kingdom's fallen queen had disappeared without a trace. And hundreds of miles away, the most feared alpha in the world was about to cross paths with the woman Darius had thrown away. Cold rain hammered the forest. Branches clawed at Elena's cloak as she pushed deeper into the wilderness. For the first time in years, there were no guards, no servants, no royal carriage, only silence and loneliness. Her boots sank into mud. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since leaving the capital. Hours later, she stopped beside a small stream. Exhausted, she knelt and splashed water onto her face. For a moment, the memories returned. Darius removing her crown, the crowd watching, Saraphina smiling. Elena clenched her fists, then forced herself to breathe.
No, she stood.
I'm not dying here. A rustling sound came from the trees. Elena immediately grabbed a fallen branch. Her eyes scanned the darkness. Nothing, just shadows. Yet the feeling remained. Someone was watching. For generations, wolves had feared the Blackthorne forest. Rogues hunted its trails. Bandits vanished within its depths. Entire patrols had disappeared without explanation. Few travelers entered willingly. Even fewer returned. And now, the former queen of Silverfang walked through it alone. Meanwhile, Silverfang Kingdom, royal court. A farmer stood before Saraphina, desperate. Your Majesty, the northern crops failed. Saraphina barely looked up from her wine. Then plant more. The farmer blinked. My queen, winter is coming. Saraphina sighed. Not my problem. Gasps echoed through the hall. The farmer stared in disbelief. Months ago, Elena would have organized relief immediately. Saraphina waved her hand. Remove him. Guards dragged the man away. Elsewhere, merchants argued in crowded streets. Food prices doubled. Citizens protested. Pack leaders demanded answers. Inside a military meeting, Commander Rowan slammed his fist onto the table. We've lost 3 border villages. A noble scoffed. Because resources are being wasted on palace luxuries. The room erupted. Every week brought new problems. Every week brought fewer solutions. The kingdom's decline did not happen overnight. It happened one bad decision at a time. Harvests failed. Trade routes weakened. Crime increased. And for the first time in years, the people began questioning their alpha. Because while Darius ruled from the throne, it was Saraphina who increasingly controlled the kingdom. Royal Palace. Servants hurried through the dining hall. One young maid accidentally dropped a silver plate.
Crash.
The room froze. The girl's face turned pale. I'm sorry, Your Majesty. Saraphina slowly stood. Her smile vanished. You broke royal property. The maid fell to her knees. It was an accident. Saraphina grabbed the girl's chin. Do accidents rebuild broken plates? No, Your Majesty. Exactly. She turned to the guards. 20 lashes. The hall went silent. Even Darius looked shocked. Saraphina. She turned.
What?
It was only a plate. Her expression hardened. A queen who tolerates mistakes creates a weak kingdom. The guards dragged the crying maid away. Darius said nothing. And that silence said everything. Across the room, nobles exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time, they saw the woman beneath the mask. 3 nights later, deep within Blackthorne Forest, Elena sat beside a small fire. The crackling flames were the only sound. Then, snap. A branch broke. Elena stood instantly. Her eyes narrowed. Who's there? No answer. Then arrows exploded from the darkness.
Whoosh.
Elena threw herself aside. The arrows struck her campfire. 4 masked assassins emerged from the trees. Steel flashed. The leader pointed his sword. Kill her. Elena backed away. She grabbed a dagger from her boot. The first attacker lunged. She dodged. The second slashed her arm. Blood splattered. The third kicked her into the dirt. Elena crashed hard. Pain exploded through her ribs. The assassins closed in. She was outnumbered, outmatched, and seconds from death. Then, a horn echoed through the forest. The assassins froze. Another horn answered. Then another. The ground trembled. The attackers exchanged terrified looks. One whispered, "No." Suddenly black arrows rained from the darkness. Two assassins dropped instantly. The remaining killers turned to flee. They never made it 3 steps. More arrows. More bodies. Silence. Elena stared into the darkness. Then horses emerged. Dozens of them. Riders dressed in black armor. Their banners carried a symbol recognized across the continent. A silver wolf beneath a black crown. The Black Banner. Every child knew the stories. Every ruler feared the name. The Black Banner Legion. The most feared army in the known world. Undefeated for nearly 20 years. Kingdoms surrendered rather than face them. The riders surrounded the clearing. Perfect discipline. Perfect silence. One warrior dismounted. He examined the dead assassins. Then looked toward Elena. "You're injured." Elena tightened her grip on her dagger. "Who are you?" The warrior ignored the question. Instead, he glanced toward the forest road. And immediately stepped aside. Every soldier followed. Heads lowered. No commands were spoken. Yet everyone obeyed. Instantly, Elena felt it. Something important was happening. Someone was coming. Across the continent, there was only one man capable of inspiring that level of obedience. One ruler whose name could end wars before they began. One alpha whose power eclipsed every kingdom, including Silverfang. The sound of hoofbeats approached. Slow, steady, unhurried. A massive black horse emerged from the darkness. Its rider wore a dark cloak. The soldiers lowered their heads even further. No one spoke. No one moved. The rider finally stopped. Then dismounted. Alpha Lucian Nightbane. The most powerful alpha alive. Tall. Cold. Unshaken. His presence alone changed the atmosphere. He surveyed the battlefield. The dead assassins. The blood. The former queen. Then his eyes settled on Elena. For several seconds, he simply looked at her. Not with admiration. Not with pity. With curiosity. A rare thing. Lucian stepped closer. His gaze narrowed. Something had caught his attention. Something unusual. Elena attempted to stand. Pain shot through her wounded arm. She stumbled. Lucian caught her wrist. The contact lasted only a second, but it was enough. His eyes shifted toward a mark partially hidden beneath her sleeve. A faint silver symbol. Ancient. Almost invisible. Lucian froze. The symbol shouldn't exist. Not anymore. The royal bloodline connected to that mark had supposedly vanished centuries ago. Yet there it was. On her skin. His expression darkened. "Where did you get that?" Elena frowned. "What?" Lucian pulled back her sleeve slightly. The mark glowed faintly beneath the moonlight. Several soldiers immediately reacted. One whispered, "Impossible." Another crossed himself. Lucian stared. Not at a fallen queen. Not at an exile. Not at a victim. At a mystery. Because the woman standing before him should not exist. And if she did, everything the continent believed about its history might be a lie. The former queen of Silverfang was hiding a secret even she didn't know. The mark on her arm belonged to a bloodline that should have died centuries ago. Which meant only one thing. Queen Elena was not who everyone believed she was. And neither was her past. The Black Banner Fortress stood high above the northern cliffs. Ice-covered mountains surrounded it. Massive walls towered over the landscape. Inside the fortress library, dozens of ancient scrolls covered a stone table. Elena sat opposite Alpha Lucian Nightbane. Several historians stood nearby. No one spoke. The silver mark on Elena's arm remained exposed. An elderly scholar carefully adjusted his glasses. His hands trembled. "You're Alpha." Lucian looked up. The old man swallowed. "I believe I found it." The room immediately focused on him. The scholar carefully opened a weathered scroll. Ancient symbols filled the parchment. His finger moved down the page, then stopped. Silence followed. What is it? Lucian asked. The historian looked directly at Elena. Your mark belongs to House Linares. Elena frowned. I've never heard that name. You weren't supposed to. The scholar slowly unfolded another scroll. An illustration appeared. A silver crescent surrounded by royal wolves. The exact symbol engraved on Elena's arm. The room grew quiet. The Linares dynasty ruled the continent nearly 400 years ago. Elena stared at the image. Impossible. The symbol was identical. That bloodline was erased during the Crimson Purge. Another historian nodded. Every known descendant was supposedly executed. Lucian folded his arms. Supposedly? The old scholar hesitated. History records many things, Alpha. Not all of them are true. Elena felt her heartbeat quicken. Her entire life, she had believed she was the daughter of a minor noble family. Nothing more. Nothing special. Now dozens of historians stared at her as if she were a ghost. The scholar carefully pointed toward the mark. There is only one explanation. Elena held her breath. You are a direct descendant of House Linares. The room fell silent. The forgotten bloodline had survived. And it was sitting in front of them. For centuries, the Linares dynasty existed only in legends. Most wolves believed the bloodline had vanished forever. But ancient kingdoms rarely disappear completely. Sometimes, their heirs survive in secret, waiting for history to discover them. Weeks passed. For the first time since her exile, Elena began rebuilding her life. Not as a queen, as herself. The northern training grounds echoed with steel. Warriors sparred. Archers practiced. Soldiers trained relentlessly. Elena joined them. A sword crashed against hers.
Clang.
She stumbled backward. A black banner instructor shook his head. Again. Elena tightened her grip. The instructor attacked. She blocked.
Barely.
Again. And again. And again. Hours passed. By sunset, her hands bled. Her muscles burned. Yet she refused to quit. Nearby soldiers exchanged looks. Most royal women would have walked away. Elena kept fighting. One evening, she sat alone overlooking the cliffs. The northern wind tugged at her hair. Lucian approached quietly. He handed her a cup of tea. You'll destroy your hands at this rate. Elena laughed softly. I've survived worse. For a moment neither spoke. Then Lucian nodded toward the training yard. The soldiers respect you. Elena looked surprised. Why? Because you keep standing back up. For the first time in weeks, she smiled. A real smile. Not forced. Not painful.
Real.
And Lucian noticed. Several days later, a strategy meeting unfolded inside the fortress war room. Generals surrounded a large map. Military discussions filled the chamber. One commander pointed toward a trade route. We should close it. Another disagreed. We'll lose thousands in revenue. The debate intensified. Then Elena spoke. What if you're both wrong? The room fell silent. Several generals looked annoyed. Lucian simply watched. Elena stepped toward the map. If you close the route, merchants suffer. She pointed elsewhere. If you keep it open, raiders continue attacking. Her finger moved along a mountain pass. Move the checkpoints here. The generals studied the map. One frowned. Another slowly nodded. A third leaned forward. Minutes later, the room realized she was right. The solution protected trade and security. Lucian remained silent. But internally, he was impressed. Not because she was clever. Because she wasn't trying to prove herself. She genuinely cared about solving the problem. After the meeting ended, one general approached Lucian. She's remarkable. Lucian's expression remained neutral. Yes. That single word carried more respect than most people ever received from him. Lucian Nightbane respected very few people. Fear was common. Loyalty was common. Respect was rare. And Elena was beginning to earn it. Not through titles. Not through bloodlines. Through actions. Far away in Silverfang Kingdom, doubt finally arrived. King Darius stood inside the royal archives. Stacks of documents covered his desk. His expression darkened. None of it made sense. The evidence against Elena had seemed overwhelming at the time. Now, small contradictions appeared everywhere. A date was incorrect. A signature looked unusual. A witness account conflicted with another. Darius picked up one document. Then another. Then another.
His jaw tightened.
Commander Rowan entered the room. You've noticed it too. Darius looked up. How long? Rowan hesitated. Long enough to be concerned. The king slammed a document onto the table. Then why didn't anyone tell me? Rowan stared at him. The answer was obvious. Because he hadn't wanted to hear it. Darius looked away. For the first time, real doubt entered his mind. And once doubt enters, it rarely leaves. That night, a palace servant rushed through a corridor. Terrified,
Sweating.
looking over his shoulder. He carried a small leather journal. The servant reached a storage room, locked the door, and finally exhaled. Then a voice emerged from the darkness. You should have stayed silent. The servant froze. His eyes widened. A shadow stepped forward.
Steel flashed.
The servant never had time to scream. The following morning, chaos spread through the palace. Guards surrounded the scene. Commander Rowan arrived first. His expression hardened. The servant lay dead. Beside him, the journal was missing. Rowan immediately understood. The murder wasn't random. Someone had wanted information buried.
Very badly.
And now the mystery had become much larger. The servant had worked inside the palace archives for years. If he had discovered something dangerous, his death ensured one thing. Someone inside the palace was terrified of the truth. 3 days later, a storm raged outside the palace. Lightning illuminated the archives. Darius searched alone. Hours passed. Nothing. Then, a loose stone shifted beneath a shelf. The king frowned. He pulled it aside. Behind it sat a hidden compartment. Inside were dozens of letters. Darius froze. Carefully, he opened the first. His face darkened. Then the second. Then the third. Every letter revealed the same thing. Payments.
Bribes.
Instructions. Manipulations. And one name appeared repeatedly. Saraphina. The room suddenly felt smaller. Darius gripped the letters. His hands shook. Months of accusations. Months of lies. Months of destruction. All connected to one person. Meanwhile, inside her royal chambers, Saraphina stood at her balcony. A nervous servant approached. My queen. What? The hidden letters. Her face drained of color. The servant swallowed. The king found them. For the first time since arriving at Silverfang, fear appeared in Saraphina's eyes. Real fear. Because she knew exactly what those letters contained. And she knew exactly what would happen if Darius finished reading them. For months, Darius had blamed the wrong woman. For months, he had trusted the wrong person. And now, holding the secret letters in his hands, he could no longer deny the truth. Someone had lied to him. Someone had manipulated him. Someone had destroyed his queen. The only question remaining was, how far would that betrayal go? Silverfang Palace. The storm outside intensified. Lightning flashed across the stained glass windows. Inside the royal court, Darius sat at the head of a chamber. The secret letters lay spread across the table. Every senior noble had been summoned. Every commander. Every advisor. Nobody knew why. The massive doors opened. Saraphina entered confidently. Her crown gleamed beneath the torchlight. She smiled, until she saw the expressions around the room. No one smiled back. Her confidence faltered. Darius? The Alpha slowly lifted one of the letters. Would you like to explain this? The room became silent. Saraphina's eyes widened. Only for a second. Then she recovered. I don't know what you're talking about. Darius threw the letter across the table. It landed in front of her. Several nobles leaned forward. The royal seal. Payment records. Instructions.
Bribes.
Witness names. Forgery orders. The evidence was overwhelming. Saraphina stared at the page. Then another. Then another. For the first time, she had no answer. Commander Rowan stood. Every accusation against Queen Elena originated from people connected to Lady Saraphina. A second noble rose. The witness testimonies were purchased. Another stood. The treasury report was stolen on her orders. A fourth noble slammed his fist onto the table. The evidence against Queen Elena was forged. The room erupted. Angry voices. Outrage. Shock. Months of lies collapsed all at once. Saraphina backed away. This isn't true. Nobody believed her. Darius rose slowly. His eyes never left her. You destroyed my queen. Saraphina swallowed. Darius. Silence. The single word echoed through the chamber. Even Saraphina flinched. The Alpha's voice had never sounded colder. You manipulated my court. He stepped closer. You framed an innocent woman. Another step. You turned me against my own mate. The room watched. Nobody intervened. Nobody defended her. Because nobody could. At last, Darius pointed toward the guards. Remove her crown. The guards obeyed. Immediately, Saraphina grabbed the crown desperately. No, the crown was torn from her head. For the first time since her rise, she looked powerless, terrified, alone. The conspiracy had lasted nearly a year. Every forged letter, every false witness, every accusation, every lie, all of it led back to one person. And now the truth stood exposed before the entire kingdom. But for Darius, the punishment had only begun. Because the greatest consequence was not losing Saraphina. It was realizing he had destroyed Elena himself. Late that night, the palace was silent. Darius stood alone inside Elena's abandoned chambers. Dust covered the furniture. Nothing had been touched since her exile. He slowly entered. His eyes moved across the room. A book remained open beside the fireplace. A half-finished embroidery sat near the window. Everything felt frozen in time, waiting for someone who would never return. Darius picked up a framed portrait. His hands trembled. The painting showed Elena smiling,
Happy. Alive.
looking at him the way she once had. Before everything changed, before he broke her, the realization hit him harder than any battlefield wound. She had told the truth. Every time. And he never listened. The portrait slipped from his fingers. Glass shattered across the floor. Darius sank into a chair. His breathing became uneven. The memories attacked from every direction. The market, the royal feasts, their wedding, her loyalty, her kindness, the humiliation, the crown, the tear rolling down her cheek. He buried his face in his hands. For the first time in years, the Alpha King cried. There were no witnesses, no audience, no kingdom, only regret, and the unbearable knowledge that he deserved every second of it. Far away in the north, life looked very different. The fortress courtyard overflowed with activity. Merchants arrived daily. Villagers sought advice. Commanders requested meetings. And surprisingly, many of them wanted Elena's opinion. A dispute broke out between two northern clans. Both leaders argued loudly. Neither would back down. Elena listened patiently, then stepped between them. You both want the same thing. The men stopped arguing. What? Protection for your people. Silence followed. Elena continued. You're fighting over territory when the real threat is the raiders attacking both sides. The clan leaders exchanged glances. Neither had considered it. Within minutes, the discussion shifted. Within an hour, an agreement was reached. Nearby soldiers smiled. This wasn't unusual anymore. People listened when Elena spoke. Not because she was a queen, because she was right. As she walked through the fortress, warriors greeted her respectfully. Children waved. Merchants thanked her. The woman who had arrived broken and abandoned was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who no longer needed a crown to be respected. Power had changed Elena. Not the power of titles, not the power of bloodlines, the power of surviving betrayal, the power of rebuilding herself. And perhaps for the first time in her life, She was becoming the person she was always meant to be. Weeks later, a landslide struck a northern village. Entire homes were destroyed. Families were trapped beneath debris. Lucian arrived with rescue teams. What he found surprised him. Elena was already there, covered in dirt, helping villagers, lifting stones, organizing supplies, comforting frightened children. For hours she worked without stopping, ignoring her own exhaustion, ignoring her own injuries. A young boy cried beside the ruins of his home. Elena knelt beside him. "We'll rebuild it." The boy wiped his eyes. "You promise?" Elena smiled. "I promise." Lucian watched silently. No titles, no audience, no political gain. She was helping because she genuinely cared. That was when something shifted. Not attraction, not infatuation, something deeper. Respect becoming admiration. Admiration becoming affection. For perhaps the first time in many years, Lucian found himself looking forward to seeing someone. And that realization unsettled him more than any enemy ever had. Several weeks later, the northern cliffs overlooked an endless sea of clouds. Sunset painted the horizon gold. Elena stood alone, enjoying the peace. Footsteps approached.
She turned.
Lucian. His expression seemed unusually serious. "Is something wrong?"
No.
He stepped beside her. For a moment neither spoke. Then Lucian surprised her. "I have a proposal." Elena laughed softly. "That sounds dangerous." "It probably is." That earned a smile. Lucian took a slow breath. Something he rarely needed to do. "I want you to stay." Elena frowned. "I already live here." "That's not what I mean." The smile vanished. Realization slowly appeared. Lucian continued. "I want you beside me." Elena stared, completely caught off guard. The most feared alpha on the continent looked almost uncomfortable. A remarkable sight. "You deserve someone who sees your worth." His voice remained calm.
Steady. Certain.
"I would like that person to be me." Silence. The wind moved through the cliffs. Elena couldn't speak. Not because she disliked the idea, because she never expected it. Not from him. Not after everything. And certainly not now. 3 days later, the fortress gates opened. An unexpected visitor entered. Alpha King Darius Blackthorne. The entire fortress became alert. Northern warriors watched carefully. Hands moved toward weapons. Darius ignored them. His eyes searched the courtyard. Then he saw her. Elena. For several seconds, neither moved. Months of pain stood between them. Finally, Darius approached.
Slowly. Carefully.
As though afraid she might disappear. "Elena." Her expression remained unreadable. Darius swallowed. "I know the truth." No response. "I know what Saraphina did." Still nothing. His voice cracked slightly. "I was wrong." The words felt strange coming from a king. "I should have trusted you." Elena remained silent. Darius stepped closer. "I made the worst mistake of my life." The courtyard had become completely quiet. Even the soldiers were listening. Darius looked directly into her eyes. The eyes he had once loved. The eyes he had once betrayed. "Come home." The words hung in the air. "Please." For the first time, the mighty Alpha King sounded desperate. Broken. Human. Elena stared at him. The man who had crowned another woman. The man who had humiliated her before an entire kingdom. The man who had destroyed everything she once believed. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Not Darius. Not Lucian. Not Elena. Then she finally opened her mouth. And every person in the courtyard waited for her answer. But Elena said nothing. She simply turned away, leaving everyone wondering what she would choose, including the two most powerful alphas in the world. The Grand Hall of the Northern Summit had never hosted so many rulers.
Kings. Queens.
Alphas. Generals. Council leaders. Representatives from every major kingdom across the continent filled the enormous chamber. Thousands occupied the galleries above. The event had originally been organized to celebrate a new alliance. Now it had become something much larger. Something personal. Whispers spread through the crowd. Everyone knew the story. Everyone knew the names. Queen Elena, Alpha Darius, Alpha Lucian, and the woman whose lies had nearly changed history. At the center of the hall stood 3 thrones. One remained empty. One belonged to Lucian. One belonged to Darius. The tension was unbearable. No one knew what would happen. Only that something important was coming. Very important. For months, rumors had traveled across the continent. The fall of Silverfang, the exiled queen, the most powerful alpha, the betrayal, the truth. Now every kingdom had gathered to witness the final chapter, and history rarely forgets moments like these. The massive doors opened. Chains rattled across the marble floor. The crowd turned. Saraphina entered between 2 guards. Gasps erupted immediately. The former queen looked nothing like the woman who once wore the crown. No royal gown. No jewels. No power. Only chains. Her eyes searched desperately through the crowd, looking for support, for allies, for anyone. Nobody stood. Nobody spoke. Nobody defended her. Every noble who once followed her suddenly found the floor fascinating. The silence was devastating. A royal prosecutor stepped forward. His voice echoed through the hall. Lady Saraphina Ashwood is hereby charged with conspiracy, fraud, treason, manipulation of the royal court, forgery, bribery, witness intimidation, and murder. Each accusation struck like a hammer. The crowd murmured. Saraphina shook her head. No. The prosecutor continued. Witness testimony confirmed she orchestrated the false accusations against Queen Elena. More evidence appeared. Forgery records, bribery accounts, secret communications. Everything. One by one. The walls she had built collapsed. Then came the final blow. Commander Rowan stepped forward. The servant murdered inside the archives died because he discovered her conspiracy. The room exploded. Outrage filled the chamber. Seraphina's knees buckled. The woman who once ruled Silverfang no longer had power. No longer had allies. No longer had protection. For the first time, she faced the consequences alone. The hall eventually quieted. Then Darius stood. Every eye followed him. The alpha who once seemed invincible looked older, tired, haunted. His gaze found Elena. For a long moment he simply looked at her. Then he stepped forward. No throne. No guards. No authority. Just a man carrying regret. Before every kingdom assembled here today. His voice echoed through the hall. I owe someone an apology. Silence followed. Darius turned toward Elena completely. I failed you. The words stunned the audience. Kings rarely admitted mistakes. Alphas almost never did. I chose lies over truth. His voice cracked slightly. I chose manipulation over trust. Several rulers exchanged surprised glances. Darius continued. I humiliated the woman who stood beside me through every hardship. The room remained silent. I destroyed my own queen. Elena watched quietly. No anger. No satisfaction. Only calm. Darius lowered his head. A gesture nobody thought they would ever witness. If I could change what I did.
His voice weakened.
I would. He swallowed.
Hard.
I would spend the rest of my life earning your forgiveness. The hall held its breath. Please. One word. Simple. Desperate.
Honest.
Give me one chance. Many expected Elena to forgive him. Many expected tears. Reconciliation. A second chance. Stories often end that way. Real life rarely does. Before Elena could answer, a chair scraped against the floor. Every head turned. Lucian Nightbane stood. The atmosphere changed instantly. Even the kings fell silent. The most powerful alpha in the world descended the platform. His footsteps echoed through the hall. Slow.
Certain.
Unshaken. He stopped beside Elena, then looked directly at Darius. Neither man spoke. Words were unnecessary. Everyone understood. Lucian turned toward Elena. Not the crowd. Not the rulers. Only her. Then he extended his hand. The entire hall watched. Elena looked at him. For a moment, The world seemed to disappear. No politics. No kingdoms. No audience. Only a choice. A choice she finally had the power to make herself. Slowly, Elena placed her hand in his. The hall erupted. Some cheered. Others gasped. Several rulers immediately stood. Lucian gently raised her hand. His voice carried through the chamber. Queen Elena, Ravenspire. Silence returned. I choose you. The words struck like thunder. You are my equal. Another silence. You are my partner. And finally, you are my Luna. The hall exploded. Thousands rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the summit. The claiming was complete.
Public.
Undeniable.
Permanent.
And Darius watched it happen, unable to stop it. Darius remained frozen. The cheers sounded distant, almost unreal. His eyes never left Elena, the woman he once believed would remain by his side forever.
Gone.
The realization settled slowly, painfully. He had lost her. Not temporarily. Not conditionally. Forever. Then more losses followed. Several allied rulers approached Lucian. Not him. Several trade leaders pledged support to the Northern Alliance. Not Silverfang. Even some of Darius's own nobles looked away. Their faith shaken. Their loyalty damaged. Months earlier, he had been one of the continent's most respected rulers. Now he was known as the Alpha who destroyed his own queen. The Alpha who believed a lie. The Alpha who lost everything. And for the first time, Darius understood the true cost of his mistake. Hours later, the summit began to end. Guests departed. The hall emptied. Darius finally approached Elena one last time. No audience remained. No cheers. No politics. Only truth. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Darius broke the silence. I never stopped loving you. The words hung in the air. Elena looked at him. Really looked at him. The guilt. The regret. The sorrow. She saw all of it. Then she answered. Calmly. Without anger. Without cruelty. You stopped loving me the moment you chose someone else's lies over my truth. Silence. Darius closed his eyes. Because he knew she was right. There was no defense. No argument. No excuse. Only the truth. And truth can be the sharpest blade of all. Morning arrived. Golden sunlight illuminated the northern capital. Citizens filled the streets. Flags waved.
Bells rang.
Celebrations echoed across the city. Elena stood beside Lucian, overlooking the crowd. The people cheered, not because she wore a crown, because she had earned their respect. Beside her stood a man who saw her value when she no longer saw it herself. Together they represented something new, a different future, a stronger future. Below them, thousands celebrated the beginning of a new era. Far away, Darius stood alone on a balcony in Silverfang. No cheers. No celebrations. No Elena. Only silence. The kingdom remained. The throne remained. But everything that truly mattered was gone. He watched the sunrise. Alone. And for the first time, he understood what loss really felt like. The Alpha thought he was replacing a queen. Instead, he was giving away the greatest treasure he would ever have. And by the time he understood that truth, she belonged to someone far more powerful. Not because that Alpha conquered her. Not because he claimed her. But because he valued what another man failed to see. And that was the cruelest lesson of all. Some mistakes can be forgiven. Some losses can be recovered. But some doors close forever. And when they do, all you can do is watch them disappear.